wanted to ask it about learning traditions. You use the word autodidact, or that came up in this, whether people learn, which is sometimes people say, oh, autodidact, you're learning all by yourself. Will you really learn something? And then universities are there as this big tradition to learn. Some of us are harshly in that, but this group is actually quite a unique learning experience, because it comes all kinds of people from different backgrounds and stuff like that. But I wanted to also throw out other traditions like, the syndicalist and unionist movement, political traditions, the anti-imperialist movement that you talked about in the 20th century as those. And what do you think in terms of whether or not, what are the benefits of being connected in some way to a tradition versus being an autodidact, and how do you be both an autodidact and
first of all, I use terms like, first of all, I mentioned autodidacts that I knew. I didn't say where, but it was basically northern working class English unionists, Marxists, and so on. When I talk about autodidacts, I mean somebody who feels that he's got to read a lot in order to, make progress, as well as being part of a union and a left-wing political party and so on and so forth. So everything changed for me after I went to Jamaica for 2 years in the late 80s and met C.L.R. James. Not there, but because I was there. And I was with him for 3 years before he died in 1989. And he was in fact an autodidact. He went to this posh school in Trinidad, and the idea was he was very clever and he played cricket well, and he was supposed to go to London, get a degree and become a doctor or a lawyer. And he rejected that and started writing fiction and sports reporting and joining the Beacon Circle and so on. So that he, when he got to London, he was 32 years old. He'd never read anything by Marx. But he was lucky. He went to a place in Lancashire called Nelson, where he went to join Leary Constantine, who was the cricket professional at a small Lancashire town called Nelson, which was known as Little Moscow because almost everybody in it was a communist. And so because of this Marxist local culture, he read his first Marxist book, and he was really lucky because he read Trotsky's Russian Revolution rather than some of the other things that could have sunk him. And in fact, his book, The Black Jacobins, uses the triad of Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin to organize that. Anyway, and he was a cricket reporter for The Guardian while he was doing that. Well, I was with him in Brixton in the last years of his life, and young black activists would come to see him in ones and twos, and they would say, tell me, oh Guru, what I should do. And he says, well, the two of you could start a newspaper. Maybe only 2 pages, and then you might find somebody else with another 2-page newspaper, and you can do that. But the thing that's important is that you should write about what you know well. You mustn't think you've got to join, arcane political theories and disputes that you don't. So I mean, he used to tell his story quite often. And he would tell people frequently, you know, you have to go away and find out who you are, what you know, and do that, because, you know, certainly to start with. So, you know, he taught me by example, you know, and not, you know, in any organized way. And in fact, you know, first of all, anyway, that's another matter. The point, I mean, you know, I was very, very lucky. I was 50 at the time. And I was very lucky to find him at a time when things were changing, you know, the Berlin Wall and you know, the collapse of the Soviet Union and all this kind of thing. So it was, I mean, you know, I mean, he used to tell me, you know, you have to follow your own nose in these things. You know, you have to be, you know, in charge of your own development and your own politics. Of course, you've got to do it with other people. And, you know, this was the turning point of my life. I mean, you know, I mean, I became what I am now really only then. And before then, I just couldn't find anything in the world to connect with, or how. I just, you know, but, you know, this going to Jamaica and staying with him in the last years of his life helped me to discover a certain style of politics. But it's not, you know, it's not based on rejecting, you know, formal political associations. I mean, you know, I have, as I think Andres mentioned, you know, I've lived in 24 countries. I'm a nomad. I mean, I had this principle that if it doesn't work here, I'm going to move on. I'm not going to adapt to it or put up with it. And, you know, my nomadism was the means of being free. But in the process, you know, I learned a great deal from people like him. But I always knew that I was a loner. You know, and in this, you know, I mean, you know, I went to Manchester Grammar School, for God's sake. I got a scholarship to St. John's College, Cambridge. I mean, you know, but you know, through being with CLR for those 3 years, I was able to devise a path for myself, which was based on acknowledging that I wanted to be a writer more than anything else, and that's not a collective thing. But it's out of tremendous respect for all the people that I met and worked with on the way.